Welcome to the Surf Strong Show. Surfing is the through line, shaping how we move through challenge, joy, purpose, and connection. Each episode follows conversations with surfers from different lives and paths, exploring the waves, stories, and lessons that stay with us. I'm Greg Finch, and this is the Surf Strong Show. On episode 39 of the Surf Strong Show, I'm joined by Henry Dittman, actor, host, voiceover pro, surfer, and recent survivor of the true endurance sport, home remodeling. You may know him from Blackish, Superstore, Naruto, or America's Funniest Videos online. Let's get to our episode with Henry Dittman. Henry, thanks so much for being part of It Comes in Waves and the Surf Strong Show. So I appreciate your time and you being here. And this is what we start with, of course. Tell us your last wave and tell us a wave that you can't stop daydreaming about.
My last wave, I just went through, I'm going to talk about the wave I can't stop dreaming about first. Can I do it out of order?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. I got into surfing 20 something years ago. I just moved to LA to be an actor. I was frustrated by the process. I was stressed out by the process. I wasn't happy with how things were. I just was unhappy. And I got my heart broken. And then Chris Wylde, who I now host the longest running Clippers podcast with, ClipCast, and who you've had as a guest, which I think is one of the reasons I'm here, reached out to me. He's like, I just tried surfing. You should try surfing. Stupidest. And by the way, 20 something years ago, we hadn't had COVID yet. Everybody wasn't freaking surfing, right?
Right.
And so I literally went and bought a board and bought a wetsuit and paddled out. And because I grew up in Florida, boogie boarding probably, and skateboarded my whole life, I caught my first wave and I never looked back. And during that time, we were just jackasses. We were those guys who would go to the break, and we were actors and comedians. And so we were much more interested in laughing and all of that. But I was kind of the guy in the crew who was always paddling 3 peaks over, trying to get a wave while everyone was doing, as Chris Wylde would say, floating and flirting. but to us, it was really like a big turning point for me. And I mean, quite literally within months of starting to surf, I started booking acting jobs and my acting career took off. And I just know for a fact it's because I was showing up to auditions having maybe almost drowned or maybe having watched the sun come up. And we were surfing like 6 days a week. So it really turned my life around, surfing. It changed my career. It started my career. So during this time, because we were such jackasses, this is the setup. It was of an era that this movie had just come out. And we were all into like the September Sessions and Shelter and all the Moonshine Conspiracy, Jack Johnson movies, like soul movies. But our favorite surf movie was a little movie called Blue Crush. And we could like quote this movie, this stupid movie. We could really quote it and we really loved it. And we even decided, Shiloh Strong, who's one of your guests, was also in our surf crew. And we each decided which of the girls we were in the crew. But there's this actor in the movie named Chris Taloa, who is a pro boogie boarder. And the reason he's a boogie boarder on the North Shore of Hawaii is because he couldn't afford a car. And you couldn't take a surfboard on the bus, but you could take a boogie board on the bus. And so this guy had this amazing moment in the movie where he was getting in a fight with the Howley, and we quoted this line. He's like, the Howley was like, bro, and he's like, bro, what you telling me, bro? And we would quote him. And so I'm surfing now, maybe I don't know if it was 10 years of surfing. It had to be about that. I booked this independent movie that shot in Hawaii. And so unfortunately, I'm going to be yet another boring person saying their daydreaming movie, their wave is in Hawaii. But it wasn't because it was the best wave I ever surfed. But this movie was shooting in Hawaii. We started on Waikiki. We went up to the North Shore. We stayed at Turtle Bay. And Chris, I'm in the prayer circle blessing the movie on the first day of production. And I look across the prayer circle, and it's Chris freaking Taloa. And he's in the cast, and I had no idea. And now I'm freaking out. And he and I became good friends shooting this movie. And by the time we went to the North Shore, he took me to surf off the wall, which is the break that's just to the left of Pipe. I got vibed by this dude, but then impressed him enough that I got unvibed by a guy in the water. It was like this cool experience. But the wave I daydream is Turtle Bay, which is not necessarily the greatest wave you ever surfed, but it was West Coast overhead that day. Hawaii, what's that, like 1.5 feet? Like they measure waves
Yeah,
very
right,
differently.
right. A
But a ripple, I got to set. And if you don't know this Turtle Bay wave, like when it hits right, it's just like, even when it's head high, it's very manageable. It's a big, beefy wave. It can get a little hollow, but it's not a high performance wave. It's just a mellow wave, even when it was head high, overhead even. And I got to set to film one day, and the first AD comes over to me and says, "Bro, we're about an hour behind. Go sign in, go get your board and paddle out. And if you keep your eye on the point, and if I'm waving, you got to get to hair and makeup." And so I went and surfed this wave. I caught one of the best waves I caught on this whole like 2 weeks of shooting in Hawaii. This long wave. I turn around. The guy is on the shore waving me in. I paddle in and I walk straight to set and into hair and makeup. I'm brushing sand off my toes to get into my wardrobe. And so that, to me, keeping in mind, this is the point of my whole long story. Part of with surfing with me was helping me get to a place of zen in my work as an actor.
Yeah.
And in my present moment. And in surfing, I found stillness I never found with yoga. I just found being present in a way I never found with meditation. It was all through surfing. And so that's the one I daydream about.
It just goes so, it says so much about how it goes so deeply into us, right? And it
Yeah.
has these different avenues in and through the narrative of a wave, of course, but then we can see how those apply in different things. Like we were talking earlier before we started about remodeling on something, and that's unique kind of stress that I went through recently too, and took the added stress and misguidance, if you will, of doing a lot of the work myself, because I know just enough to be able to do those things. It takes me 10 times longer, of course.
Sure.
But it's like adding
DIY life, bro,
adding the stress.
same.
And it's that idea of, and then being in that space too. And you're right, like my surfing had to go down because my allocation available time was nil. But you see the absence of it. You start sensing these other things of like, whoa, why did I get so bothered by that? Why did I get so upset about that? And this is something that I talk about with my friends and my other surf friends and my wife too, of like, you can't always have surfing. The waves are not always there just like when you need them. So how do you take that feeling of that and be able to not certainly look for a replacement because it doesn't exist,
No.
but something that gives you some reprieve, that you do have more control, like you mentioned yoga or meditation. And this is what I'm working through right now, is like I'm 52 now, and I'm on the central coast of California. Spring winds come, the surf consistency just drops.
Yeah.
And it's like I struggle with this. It's like I can't rely on it that way, because it puts this pressure on surfing that is completely out of your hands.
That's a really good point. And also, your weather is truly restrictive. And I'm sure there's
Yeah.
people listening to this up in the Pacific Northwest who are rolling their eyes.
Right.
But like, you would never need a 5 mil wetsuit to do what we do in Southern California. And like, it gets super cold. And like, you can always find something here. It's never really flat. From us down to San Diego, there's always a little something.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And you're right. It's one of those things, like it's all relative, right? I wear 4.3 pretty much year round here, but it's not to the point where it's like, oh, it ever keeps me from going out. But then I'll have friends come up from Southern California, and they're just their norm is just so different that they're just like, it's like a warmer day, and I'm like, are you all right? And they're like, whoa,
but I'm also exclusively a Dawn Patrol surfer. I don't enjoy middle of the day surfing like I do Dawn Patrol. I like the lack of crowds. I like that the glassiness.
Yeah.
I like
just the way you start your day too. It carries you the rest of the day. I'm the same.
And I'm also
I do
willing
surf during
to
the day because I can.
Sure. I did too before I had kids and moved to Burbank. But I also I've paddled out in the real dark. I've paddled out where me and the other guy, like, we should wear glow sticks so we see each other.
Right.
I really like it in the morning. So then my most recent wave, we talked about this pre-show, but now I'll repeat it. We outgrew our tiny house in Burbank, almost like every other homeowner. in Southern California, maybe in America, like we have the low interest rate and the too small a house, and we can't afford to move to the bigger house.
Yeah.
So we had to build onto our house. And we lived in this house for a dozen years of me doing everything myself.
Yeah.
And so it was time for windows and a roof and floors. Like we really did the whole thing while we lived on the property. And at one point, 10 weeks of sleeping in a tiny guest house in the back. So we went through this grind where I really couldn't surf. And recently, Chris Wylde said to me, bro, I really should have been dragging you out of the house and make you go surfing.
Yeah.
And I was like, bro, I couldn't. We were literally inflating inflatable beds for 6 months every morning to get our kids to school. And then I came out of that with a double hernia, which is probably from moving all the furniture out of my house into a storage pod by myself one weekend because we found out last minute we had to. And then straight into pneumonia. So like I had after considering myself to be an athlete for 20 plus years of surfing, 6 days a week, always also hitting the elliptical at home, lifting weights, I suddenly found myself having not surfed for easily 6 months. And so my last wave is my first wave in 9 months. And so I could argue that's the best wave, the wave that I always daydream about. And it wasn't great. It was at a beach break spot called El Porto in Manhattan Beach. I went there because it was the only place where the tide was not going to swamp it. I took out my 8-foot Wayne Miata Reshape by Don Katawaki off of the first board I ever bought. There's this egg that catches everything. The wave count is disgusting on it. It catches waves like a longboard. It carves like a shortboard. And I just had maybe the best session I've ever had. But again, it's because I hadn't been in the water for so long. And so that's my most recent wave. But you couldn't have told me it wasn't a perfect day. I probably had if I caught 12 waves, I bet 2 of them didn't close out within 2 turns. But those couple that stayed open enough for me to kind of tuck in, they just were the best waves, man. And those are my most recent.
Yeah, it says so much too about, well, again, we could say it's as we get older or different perspective or whatever, and those are definitely all influences. I think it's just the longer you are connected to the ocean, be it through surfing or whatever other connection that you have, ours is of course surfing, is that you see just more and more and deeper the importance of that immersion in that. And for things that I've said 100 times that are still extremely relevant, just become more important as I say them, is you're part of something larger, completely and instantly changes your perspective on whatever troubles or issues that you have, as well as what you feel wonderful about. That's something I don't even really think about that much, but something really great happened and you get out in the water, it doesn't diminish that at all. It evens out those hills and valleys so much to where you just have this perspective of like gratitude and presence and being grateful for those things that you have. And that part of it is what going back to what I just said before, is working on taking that and really, really practicing that without that immediate immersion of it. That's on me. Like I have got to work on that and improve that, because then it makes the power of that ocean even more impressive when you have it.
Yeah, that's really, that's profound. I also think like you keep using the word immersion. It is that. It's also for me a little bit the like submersion in water itself.
Yeah.
Right. During COVID, we put up an above ground pool in our backyard. Everybody was kind of locked in their property. And then when summer ended and we took it down, I went into a depression. And so I bought one of those Coleman inflatable hot tubs.
Yeah.
Because I just needed to submerge myself in water. By the way, I still have one. They are amazing. They run pretty hot, like 104 degrees. But like I find every night, for me, that becomes really important to get myself in water. No, it's not as good as living by the beach and going to the ocean and jumping in the ocean. It's not as good, but it's by far better than not getting wet for me.
There's such a parallel right there to what I talk to about with the surfers that I work with, right? They a lot of times they come from this perspective of the ideal, like, well, what's the ideal thing I should be doing? And I really try to get them off of those terms and those definitions, because first of all, what is ideal? It's always changing and evolving. And the parallel of this is, yes, surfing and being in the water and having that is our mark that we're always going to. But just like that, moving and just being continuous about those things is how it bridges between those larger goals, be it surfing, just be moving, water immersion, or what's my ideal program? Well, what you really want is you want to just be moving every day. You want to be
Yeah.
doing working on your breath every day. And it's that idea of getting off of always having a goal, always working towards something that feels like progression, but then taking those small daily steps, be it immersion in water, that's getting me to that next place. So it's not this all or nothing proposition. We're
Oh
just
yeah, yeah, yeah.
always looking.
Yeah, that's really true too, man. God, you're really smart. It's really nice to meet you, dude. I also think like we sometimes like when me and Chris and Shiloh first learned how to surf, we were going literally I would always say we'd surfed 8 days a week, and we would literally surf around 7, 8 days in a row until one of
Yeah.
us was like, I can't do this, dude. I can't, I need a day off. My body's killing me. Now, of course, we were learning to surf, so you don't paddle as smart. You paddle for
Yeah.
too many waves. Like you needed to be in better shape. But the amount of times that I have found maybe during this last 9 months where I stayed out of the water because the conditions weren't just right, that became important for me to go the day that I finally went. But I also find like my kids are getting older. My son, the day before that wave, we all went to the beach as a family. I brought a board. I caught a couple of closeouts. It was more at a family beach than a surf beach. It was the first time he grabbed a boogie board and got in the water and caught his own waves. I wasn't pushing him into the
Yeah.
water.
Yep.
And like I was watching him and I was like, you couldn't have told him he wasn't dragging belly on the shore break rocks. He was surfing. So like the
Yeah.
need for it to be this perfect scenario, and I said to my wife today, because I'm really like, I know you want to talk a little bit about the fitness that we do. The amount of times I haven't worked out, got on the elliptical, lifted weights because I only had 20 minutes. And today I said to my wife, it's like, I don't know what I've been doing. 20 minutes every day through all this process would have had me in much better shape
Mhm.
because I keep
Yeah.
waiting for the hour and a half I used to spend lifting and
Yes.
charging that maybe my body
That's
shouldn't
a
have anymore anyway at this age.
it's huge that that shift of you're looking towards just consistency trumps everything else.
Yeah.
That the ability to be able, because one thing, you're reinforcing the positive too. The action, of course, is extremely important. Your body needs to move, it's made to move. Everything about our modern lives tends to push us away from that movement, right? Everything's comfortable. A lot of the work that we do is static and on a screen or something.
Yeah.
And then the idea of just focusing on your breath and what your breath can do. We're fortunate enough to be able to tie it to surfing. There's such a obviously a direct correlation there that really helps go deeper into it. That ability to practice the almost perceived depriving yourself a little bit of that idea of oxygen, right? It's training yourself to be uncomfortable and to become more comfortable with that. That's hugely powerful. And then, of course, mobility and recovery and the things
Yeah.
that we do to come down. Like you said, you're learning, you were surfing 7, 8 days in a row, then you go, my body needs to recover and it needs to rest and recharge. And that, of course, is such an important aspect of how those things come together. It's just like sleep, right? The deprivation of sleep gets to a point where it's not sustainable. Even just smaller increments of that getting shaved away, and then something gives. Movement and fitness and surf specific fitness is so parallel to that.
Yeah.
And I just try to really simplify for people as best as possible. It's movement, breath, and mobility every day. And you set it and it's powerful. If that means that you have 15 or 20 minutes, even if it's 3 chunks of 5 minutes, that bridges to the next day and you reset and you do what you can on that day. All of that connection is like compounding interest for your health.
Yeah. And what we're talking about renovations on a house, right? And there's a saying in DIY and renovations and all that kind of stuff that perfect is the enemy of good. So like if
Yeah.
you're waiting for that perfect amount of time, again, like when 20
Mhm.
something years ago, I didn't have kids, I had very few responsibilities. I'd get up, I'd go surf for 3 hours. Then I'd go work out in the gym for an hour and a half. By the way, also my back would go out about once a year and I'd be crawling around on my hands and knees. Like, it wasn't like what I was doing was great. I've gotten wiser. I've gotten a little wiser about recovery. I'm sure the hot tub helps that at night. But yeah, to find the bits and pieces of it, because I also, but part of it for me too is the longevity of it. You know, I want to, it started because I felt like, oh, at some point my kids are going to be out of the house and I want to be able to go back to surfing 7 days a week when they need me less. And that time is coming. But then I still remember the first time one of my son said to me, hey, do you want to go in the yard and play soccer, or do you not have it in you? And he was like 5. This was not his language. I clearly had too many times said, bro, I just don't have it in me. And from that point on, I was like, wow, it's not my kids' fault I didn't find their mom when I was 20. It's not their fault they have an older dad. There's a lot of older dads in Southern California. So it became important to me too that when he says, do you want to race? Yeah, bro, I want to race. And, you know, do you want to go hit the water? Yeah, I want to go hit the water. And now that I can see him getting stoked, I'm like, oh, now there's a whole other thing. Now I got to be able to like charge with him.
And it's this idea of the language and our perceptions have changed, right? Like I have a client that's 78, 82. I have a couple clients in their late 60s that are surfing better now than they ever have, and partly for exactly what you just said. When they were younger,
whoa. Is the 82-year-old? Wait a second, I got to know this. Is the 82-year-old like popping up and surfing on a surfboard?
Oh yeah, the board might be a little bigger.
Yeah,
it might be a little bit more stable,
but not stand-up paddle, not kneeboard. Oh, I love to hear that. Nope. I love to hear that because I want to know that's possible. No disrespect, by the way, to stand-up paddle. No disrespect to kneeboard, but
my view is always whatever gets you in the ocean and stays connected to
ride waves.
I'm all on board.
But I want to. I want to know I can do
on
that
a surfboard. Exactly.
I like it.
And it's you put the work in and you change what needs to be prioritized and changes of different. But like those clients that I have like that are in their late 60s, like he goes to Bali for like a month every year, and he does all these other surf trips, and they prepare for them in a way that they surf when they're home. He's Southern California, so he's surfing consistently. But when I've been working with him for a few years now. And so when he came to me, he already had a strong foundation, but then we started really prioritizing like where you're spending your time. Now he's retired now too, so his calendar opens up, but it also was like, okay, you got to pull back on this that you're doing. You're overdoing it here, and your body is not symmetrical in a way. So you're seeing this tendency in your left knee, and it's happening because you're doing all of this work and it's pushing you out of this balance, and you need to do A, B, and C a little bit more to really bring you back to the center, and then much more in cue with, okay, I'm not going to go surfing today. It's not because I can't, it's because there's another swell coming in a few days and I need to do a couple of these other recovery items, so I'm ready for that. If the surf was still pumping, he's in a place now where he can. Oh, and then it's going to fade off a little bit and I'm going to be able to recover from there. It's all kind of seeing that bigger picture and how you prioritize. It's absolutely longevity, like you used earlier, is central to that.
Yeah.
Don't push us to a place where something is decided for us and we're doing all this work to elevate our foundation so we can continue to do this for the rest of our life, because it's that important.
It is that it's essential. It is that important.
Yeah.
But also, like, you make a really good point. It makes me think about marathon runners, right? They don't ever run a marathon to train for a marathon.
Exactly. That's a perfect analogy. Exactly.
Well, you can have
They're
that.
leading
That's a freebie
up
for
to
you.
that. They're ramping into that, right?
Yeah.
They're like the periodization that they use. And an example in the surfing world, and the way that I do it is like going on these trips, right? They're like, I have a client leaving for Indo in a few weeks. They have I think they're there for 20 days. They surf consistently, we work, and then we're ramping up what they're doing leading into it, and then a handful of days, 3 or 4 before, we start backing off certain things to really kind of fully charge their battery. And then when they're on the trip, we're prioritizing what you're doing away, before, and after your actual surfing. And this is one of the things that falls apart for a lot of people is they're prepping maybe, and they feel really strong. And then they get there, and some of those habits, because it's this kind of brand new world and exciting, and they're out of their daily schedules,
Yeah.
certain things fall away. And then they're like, oh, by the fifth day, I'm just feel wrecked. It's like, no, the prep and the recovery post becomes even more important. And it's just kind of setting those habits and getting practiced at it.
Do you think that there's any of that exhaustion? Obviously, jet lag and different time zones and stuff like that. Rest you're talking about. The other wave I really wanted to talk about, and I couldn't decide, the spiritual like connection wave for me is my family's Basque from the north of Spain on my mom's side, and we all went. I didn't sleep all night. One night we took a bus to San Sebastian, and so I got to surf the Basque lands after being raised by 50% Basque family, and it's a wave that I got a hold of how to surf it for the last wave, but it wasn't a surf trip. So I had family waiting for me, and I basically had 20 minutes. Yeah. They're like, get out there and grab a wave for 20 minutes, which is of course insane. Right. Maybe because
then you're really pressing too.
I basically have two sets in 20 minutes. I can get a wave. And I did get a great wave at the end, but I always have held on to that wave. That is a wave I daydream about as thank God I got one good one.
Yeah.
One good drop and one good turn, and it went a very long way. It's a great wave. But I also wonder, it is far more exhausting to go surf a break you don't know, where you don't have it all the way dialed in, and you don't know how to where to sit. And the break I really love to surf, even when there's 50 guys out, I could easily get mine, and I do it very respectfully. I'm not like a drop-in guy. I'm not a wave hog. Yeah. But I really know where to sit in my own break to get a ton of waves. And I know when guys are burning themselves out. So I could imagine somebody going to Bali, where it also can get pretty big. I could imagine somebody getting cooked just because they may be in great shape, but they don't know where they're supposed to be. And it's not as simple as just sitting behind the next guy.
And we'll be right back. If you've been listening and know it's time to take your surf fitness seriously, I'd love to invite you to explore my surf exclusive coaching program. This is high level, fully customized coaching designed to unlock more strength, endurance, and mobility so you can keep surfing at your best. I only take on a very limited number of surfers because the attention and personalization is deep. If you're curious whether it's a fit for you, reach out and we'll connect and map out a personalized plan just for you. Go to surfstrongfit.com/start. Now back to the show. What you're really speaking to there is the unknown, right? There's those parts of your brain that are on cue for risk. And so when you're in an unknown space that has real and perceived dangers, right? So I've talked about this a lot, but our brain, it does two things, really, primarily. Evolved states are conserve calories and reduce risk. Everything takes calories, and everything has perceived risk. Yeah. So you put yourself in a space, walking out the door is perceived risk. That's always the line I use. So when you put yourself in a space that has real risk to it that's elevated, your mind will exaggerate that. And when you're in an unknown break, that gets exponential. So your brain is using this energy, mental, that translates to the physical in a way that you're always a little on edge. And there's an important reason for that, right? You could talk about adrenaline, talk about all the other things that the brain does to protect the body, but that has consequences. And you have to be really adept at tuning into that so you make the best informed decisions as possible. And for some people, it's a tough transition, be it age and other things, where they're like, so you're just telling me I have to surf less, I have to be less. And I'm like, not necessarily. You just have to see it as the larger total. So think of this as one wave, one session, one day. In the larger context, do you want that one wave, that one session, that one day to mean more to you than the surf trip of the week or surfing for the long term? All of those are choices. So being able to really give yourself a perspective of just all the things you listed. jet lag. Hey, I just flew halfway around the world 2 days ago, and my body and brain are trying to figure that out. That's an influence. I didn't sleep as good last night because of that same reason. My sleep patterns were off. All of these are part of this. So when you're in this moment, where am I actually? How much do I actually have left in the tank? And if I choose to shorten this just a little bit, go recover, go replenish, go do some mobility, maybe this afternoon or certainly the next morning, I'm going to be in a much better place and I'll know a little bit more about where I'm surfing right now. Does that make sense for me right now? Sometimes it's yes, sometimes it's no. It's just asking the question so you really, really stay informed in where you're at any one moment. Of course, we can transpose this onto any parts of our life, but in surfing specific, because of the real and perceived risks being there and it being finite, we're here surfing right now. We can really focus into that. And I always end these kind of things, talking about like, I don't have this figured out either. I struggle with exactly those same things. I tell people continuously how to do these things and to work on these things. And then I put myself first person in this thing and I have to really delve down. Where am I right now? Because that part of my brain, that 21-year-old part of my brain is saying, keep surfing, stay out there, go, go, go. And stepping away from that a little bit and letting our experience and our, call it maturity, if you will, inform us in a way that we really can go forward and surf for the rest of our life. It's
Well, yeah,
ultimately
man.
the answer.
Yeah, man. Because what it means to us is it's different. Surfing is a different. Even we're saying the same things to each other. We're not meaning the same things. Your approach to surfing
Yeah.
is different than my approach to surfing. What I love about it
Yep.
is different from what you love about it. It's so
Yeah.
individual, and that's a really good point. Like what I love about it has also shifted. It's
Yeah.
become less of a me, and more of a like now I want my kids to come into it, and
Yeah.
it's definitely means a different thing. Like it was never an
Yeah.
extreme sport for me, even when I
Yeah.
approached it as an extreme sport athlete. That wasn't what I was after. I still
Yeah.
remember this wave I grabbed at Sunset Cliffs at San Diego one time when I was with Shiloh and I was with Chris and I was with our buddy Kiernan. And I was on this single fin Rob Machado Channel Islands board. He co-shaped it with Al Merrick. I don't remember, can't believe I'm remembering all this. And I just got the wave of the day, it felt like, with this awesome drop and just dropped into this soul lean. And as I went straight by all my buddies, it's what we all want. You want your wave of the day to
Yeah.
go right by your buddies. Um, and to me, that's always been what it's been about. Like, leave my body, leave my thoughts for a second, have these
Yeah.
big, beautiful carving moments, on God's canvas and
Yeah.
draw a beautiful, slow, groovy line. And that is not better. It's what I've always wanted from it. I've also had periods where I'm trying to shred and I'm trying to rip and I'm trying all these
Yeah.
things, but that's not better than the guys that I surf with when I'm at Topanga and they're all there ripping, or better
Yeah.
than the guy or worse than the guys who are at Mavericks surfing 25, 30-foot waves. It's just all, we're
Right.
just all doing it for a different reason.
Yep. Yep.
And it keeps changing
Absolutely.
for me also, you know?
And also really allowing it to change because certain things are outside of our influence and we don't have control of all those things. And if you hold on to that, I've had, friends where they're just like, they don't surf anymore because for some of them, it got to this place, well, I'm not doing what I did before. And so I'm less than. And I've tried to talk to them like, well, you're kind of missing what the real core of this is. And maybe they'll come back around to it. But I don't have to tell you, it is an extremely difficult thing to do, surfing. And the farther you step away from it and the longer you step away from it, the more difficult it is to get back into the rhythm of that. A lot of that is fitness, a lot of that is the strength. It's this really, really unique combination of these skills that we need to be able to maintain safely doing it and not hurting us. So, but to see that, and I saw that enough kind of with what I do and seeing that happen. And I remember telling myself years ago that I don't want that to ever be take over what it gives me and what I get from it is to have this perception or my ego out front of like my skills are diminishing. It's like, it's my job to maintain that level of my surfing that makes me feel good, but it's also just to make sure, go back to that idea of immersion. Like, this is always the central part of it. I'm a better version of myself when I do it. So I always want to have that as the top priority.
It might be hard. I've always found it quite easy to get back into it, but I never have laid off for very long. But it's
Yeah.
far harder existentially to not surf.
Yes.
It's
No
far
doubt.
harder. And
Yeah.
I can tell you, like, there's so many times along the course of the last 20 something years of surfing where I've said, like, man, I could never live in a place where I don't know what I would do. My wife's from near Buffalo. We talked about, like, would we ever sell our house, move to the country? I'm like, I guess I could get into river kayaking. Is that like what you could
Yeah.
do? Like, I've surfed the Great Lakes before. I hosted a travel
Hmm.
show and surfed the I know that exists, but I think there's a lot of us who, once we got bit by it, we're like, oh, I can never not have this in my life. And I
Yeah.
don't know if
Yeah.
doing it once a year would do it for me. I don't know if, like, a trip, if I moved inland and I visit my friends once or twice a year and surf, I don't know if that would do it for me. I think I have to have this forever. That's why I'm so stoked to hear you have clients
Yeah.
that at my parents' age are
Hmm.
still doing that, are still doing pop-up surfing. That's thrilling to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I see it in them. They're inspiring for those reasons. And I also see kind of first person the work that they put in to make that happen. And it also, you see a path then. You're like, okay, I'm
Yeah.
here where I am right now, physically and mentally, and I work every day on it to make sure that I maintain that. And that essentially just doesn't change. What you prioritize, where you spend your time on changes. But just that, again, going back to that day to day to day consistency, even if it has to shrink down in time, it keeps you in the rhythm of that. And that really doesn't change. I
Yeah.
see that in those clients. That just doesn't change. Sometimes they have more time available to it or more mental space to think about it. But it's very much about that when life gets crazy for them too, a little injury or somebody's sick in the family or whatever distraction, that's still that same idea is pulling them away. And what do we do to make sure that it always is a priority? Because this is what is so wonderful about it, right? If we're able to maintain our surfing, then that means our fitness and our strength and our mental health is also elevated too. So
Oh
the
yeah.
rest of our life is better because of that. It allows us to really just be able to focus. Is surfing the most important thing in our lives? Of course not. It just makes the most important things in our life, we're able to be there for that in such a more profound way because of this. And that singular focus helps everything else. I hope everybody has that thing. For us, it's surfing, but I hope, and when you come across somebody that doesn't have that thing or is seeking that thing, a lot of times it's extremely clear. Like it's just, and we can feel it in ourselves. When we're not able to do this, then things kind of start to fall apart a little bit.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I almost said, well, I don't want it to make it sound as though it solves everything, but it kind of does.
It just puts
It
us in a
kind of does.
place to be able to work. It does.
Yeah.
It's the first block of the puzzle.
Yeah, I
When
mean,
that
when you're
block is
really
there.
struggling and you get to the beach and you duck dive through that first wave and you feel yourself push through it, like
Yeah,
I'm not trying to be hokey, but that's a baptism. Like you feel that
it is.
feeling of becoming
Yeah,
weightless, and maybe that's where the
it's
submersion thing comes for me too. It's like it really physically takes all the weight off of your body to be in the water.
mhm. Yeah.
So you
You could
have
go all
those,
you could go so existential with, literally that's where we start, right? In uteral suspension and
yeah,
all of those things in water. I mean, you could go really deep in all those things, and I think there's just so much truth in that. And it's just that the stillness of being underwater, the quiet of being underwater, just all of those things puts us in a position to deal with our shit so much easier.
yes. Yes, absolutely. So now I just have to figure out how to do it for a very long time, which it sounds like you've got dialed in. It's
Well,
awesome.
just like everybody else, right? Like we have the path, and then where it becomes difficult is always not always the knowing, it's the doing and staying consistent when life and all the other distractions come in. How do I hit that mark to just make sure I keep progressing? And Yeah, I feel like we're in a position that we're farther ahead in a sense that we kind of know that idea and know how important it is, and now it's just putting it into practice. And it's just like everybody else. Like I just have to keep putting that into practice, and that's why I do this show. That's why I do what I do, is to help as many surfers as possible. But also, it's just to reinforce and make it centered to myself of don't lose sight of this, because like we just said, it's the most important block for all the other pieces.
Yeah, and you're not too far. If you're listening, like I'm sorry to be like a call to action, but like you're not. If you're listening to this, you're not too far gone to go get back in the water. You do push-ups for
No.
a week and you're back in. Like that
Yeah.
day that I went and surfed before my most recent wave, it was a crashing shore break. It was it definitely was a decent amount of paddling, and I felt the like soreness at my rib points that you get used to get that you don't get anymore because you get worn into that. But it doesn't leave you. It is riding a bike. You don't forget how to ride waves. I didn't lose any of my skill of catching a wave and riding a wave. Was I exactly as good a surfer as I was a year prior when I was surfing more regularly, or 20 years prior when I was fanatical about it? Probably not, but the feeling is not different.
Yeah.
What I got out of it is
Yeah.
not less. And in fact, maybe it's that thing of like when you don't, I don't know, drink for a while, or maybe it's like with, I don't know, drugs or something like that, where it's like, oh, you lay off of it, you need very little of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like maybe I don't need to surf 8 days in a row to get my stoke on.
Yeah.
And maybe I can
Yeah.
get out there for 25 minutes in between my kids catching waves on boogie boards and still get that thing. But I do
Well,
want
it's
to get back to 8 days
interesting
a week.
that
I really
it's
do.
kind of like what you were saying before about the idea of life changes, right? We're at this point in our lives where like my daughter's going to leave for college in fall, right? So we're in this transition point. And I've talked about this on the show before, but it's where we are right now is I see a point in my life where I don't necessarily need to have surfing every single day. I don't want it to be a one time a year or twice a year or any of that. But this transition of, I've talked about this recently with my friends. It's like where we are, there's not this setup where it's consistently like you look and you go, okay, that swell and that angle and that period, this tide and this wind, that's going to be firing right there. There's a few world class waves near where I live, and it's impacted for good reasons. But there's not that place where you're like, oh, well, I'm going to go. Where we are, there's a lot of choices, and you need to be out looking at them and putting your eyes on them. And you're rewarded with that a lot of times with surfing and getting an incredible session with a friend because you put the time in and you're where it needs to be. But
I
I
miss
also
that.
see this, yeah.
pre-surf line.
Yeah, right. There's this underlying aspect of that, though, that has its own kind of stress, which is when I'm here at home, there's that option, there's that chance. And so part of me is always like, okay, all right, okay, what's the tide doing? Like I have this kind of thing going. And when I'm away from that, that dissipates and goes away. Now, again, it doesn't mean I don't want to have those options of being able to surf for more than not. But I also think I'm in this place where a reprieve from that kind of kinetic energy, I think is also positive. Where like the example I've given before in the past when my daughter was younger and we would go as a family vacation, my wife would go, oh, do you want to go here? You know, you might be able to get some surf. And I learned very quickly, oh, I don't want to do that. Let's go on this trip. Let's go to a lake. I still have water, I still have activity, but that completely is gone then. I'm not, okay, what's the wind doing? What's this? I'm not partially somewhere else. I want to be right here in this trip. And I kind of see that in my life happening too, like being at a place where like that's up, and then I can fly to a place where I get a few weeks of just solid, and that's what I'm doing. And then I come back and like we live on the Central Coast and we're going to always have a place here, so I can always come back to this. But it's just this idea of like you're transitioning, and it's that not having it every day as an option. I think there might be a place for that in the near future.
Yeah, that's solid, man. I mean, when my wife and I I'd just done that movie again, the Hawaii movie. So I'd surfed Hawaii,
Mm-hmm.
which felt like something off my bucket list. I've been lucky that acting jobs and hosting jobs have provided me a lot of surfing opportunities. So I've surfed like Japan and New Zealand and Hawaii and gotten around to some really cool spots you wouldn't normally go on a surf trip. And when we planned our honeymoon, she really wanted to go to Hawaii. She'd never been. She's like, she really wanted to go to Maui. It felt like the porridge that Goldilocks ate, sort of
Yeah.
between the other
Right.
islands. And she was like, do you want to bring a board? Should we try to set you up to surf? And I was like, honey, it's our honeymoon. And where we're staying, there really isn't surf. I could go down. Look, if it becomes easy, if I meet somebody at the hotel or I see a rental spot, although that doesn't really describe Maui that much in my experience of it, it's like, it's not Waikiki. I said, if it becomes easy, I'll surf. But I really want to be present with you on our honeymoon. And I've already surfed Hawaii. Now, I'd never surfed Maui. And one of my best friends, this guy, Kieran, who I mentioned earlier at the time, was like, he lived there for years. He told me all the surf spots. He's like, you cannot miss surfing Maui. And I was like, right, but I also can't miss being fully present on my honeymoon. So I know that me surfing Turtle Bay was not me surfing Maui, but there was something to be said for not having that feeling the whole time of like, I got to surf. I got to be able to. And I was still in the mode where I felt the pressure of coming home and telling my boys I'd surfed. So I was working a lot in New Zealand shooting these commercials at the time. And if I came back and I hadn't found a chance to rent a board and get to Raglan or get to like some spot to surf, I felt like I was coming home with some shame.
Yeah.
And where I sit now is like, you know what? Yeah, it's a bummer I didn't surf for 8 months while we renovated our house. But I'm really glad that my kids had me every single morning when they woke up to help them acclimate to this weird thing we put ourselves through. So that's interesting, man. You give me a lot to think about, bro.
It's an interesting thing. I think that's why it's like surfing is such that through line, right? Through our lives, through the connections that we have. And it's really the core of why I started this little kind of sub-series of my show is like, I like those stories. I like what that does as the thread in our life and bringing us back to that. And it's just the jumping off point for stories in our life.
Yeah. I can't imagine that somebody would never come back to surfing. It's hard for me to, but again, it's different it means something different from all of us. That's exactly the point of it, right? The idea of like falling out of it, I can't really get it. I couldn't do it.
It is interesting because this isn't who I was thinking about when we talked about it earlier, but I also had this friend that grew up in Encinitas, Leucadia, and surfed contests since he was young and got to a high level, and that was a possible path of going that way. And he's our age, so like the Rob Machados are around, and friends and surfing with that level. And when I met him, he was going through college, in Santa Cruz, and I was still on this upswing of like my daily surfing, and he just didn't really surf that much anymore because he got burnt out.
And it was
like his childhood,
because it was a sport
every single day.
That's right.
It was a sport. It was an activity. And it was funny because like I was like, oh, let's go surf, and he's like, all right. And of course I go and I'm like, God damn it. I will never be that good. No. I don't care how long and how many times I surf. And he hadn't surfed in months.
But the best surfer in the water is the one having the most fun. That was like what we always used to say when we would get out and surf. Yeah. And I really like, we're seeing it with youth sports right now, right? My son is more in the 8-9 range. So he's doing youth sports. These kids are quitting their sport at like 12, 13. Yeah. They're burned out. It's all turned into another money-making machine. And I remember reading that the Kelly Slater book that we all read 20 years ago, where we really started to understand how he started winning contests. He's the GOAT. Yeah. But really what he did was figure out how to win contests first. Yeah. Yeah. And the point system and the most amount of turns and the most amount of maneuvers. And I really could imagine it's not every kid that, like, if you think we saw John Florence in that one movie when he was a toddler and he became the biggest surfer in the world. I bet you for every John Florence, there's 1,000 of them who are badass groms who then get through it and are like, I can't get pushed anywhere more by my dad. And I've been in the water with guys who are screaming at their 12-year-old son, you got to get out there if you want to be any good at this. And it's like, oh my God, man, or just let him surf.
Yeah. Well, it's taking something that could just be so beautiful and lifelong, literally lifelong for them, and it just changes into something else. You're right. Like
but there's not that many free surfers. There's not that many Rob Machados and I can't remember the name of the other guy who was like on that reality show, Surf House reality show 15 years ago, and he's on the North Shore. He's a male model, but he's a free surfer. There's not that many, right? Like they're more often contest surfers.
Yeah.
And Machado was a contest surfer who finally just was like, I don't want it like this.
Yeah. No.
So I could see why they get burned. That is a reason why I could see getting out.
Yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely.
He'll find it
and then
again.
hopefully you just think it comes
again.
back around, you know. Yeah, hopefully it just comes back around.
Yeah, he's going to get his kids in the water or something. He'll love it.
Yeah, no doubt. Henry, thank you so much for being part of the Surf Strong Show, and it comes in waves. And your time is valuable, and I really appreciate you taking the time with us.
Dude, I dug it, man. It's really nice meeting you. This is awesome. Great program.
Thanks for listening to the Surf Strong Show. Our mission is simple: build a healthier surf community and help you surf strong for life. If today's conversation gave you something valuable, share it with a friend and help spread the movement. For bonus programs, surf-specific training, and ways to connect directly, head to surfstrongfit.com/start. And if you're ready for high-touch, customized coaching, reach out to see if you're a fit for my surf-exclusive program. Until next time, train smart, breathe deep, travel far, and surf strong for life.